Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rails 6 tutorial video. This one's going to cover deploying to production. This is sort of an intermission between like part 5 and part 6 of the week 2 20 and 20 challenge videos. I was working on deploying the restaurant to production this night. I've actually been up probably 9 hours since like 1 a.m. or something. It's 9 right now. But I decided to upload this one instead because it's a bit more concise. It'll help people that need to deploy to production, and it gives me some kind of filler while we work out how to get active storage working in production. I do talk about, not knowing how to deploy Webpacker to production, but we actually managed to solve that in this channel's Discord while I was editing this video. So I added in some text to say, hey, add the style sheet tag to your application.html. And that should make it work because that made it work for me. But I'll respond to any comments if you guys have them about making stuff work. We also have the Discord. The link will be in the top of the video description. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for me for now. Let's go ahead and let's jump into some code. Okay, let's go ahead and let's get started. So the first thing you'll probably notice is I have a bunch of tabs open here. Generally, when you deploy to production, unfortunately, something new seems to happen and go wrong every single time. So I do have some solutions here and some articles for you guys when we get to certain points. And hopefully I remember to go through most of these, but we'll see. So the first thing we're going to do is if you go to gorails.com and you go to Guides Deploy Rails, you get an entire text article for the setup instructions for deploying to production. Now, there are a couple steps in here that are missing, I think, but that's really just if you're setting up your first application in production. So this seems more like it's geared towards like a second or a third installation. And that's mostly just because like stuff, if you're adding in a Postgres database, you don't have the Postgres build tools on your local computer. That's not mentioned. Obviously, you can take the Postgres build, or you can take the Postgres gem and put it into a production block. It ultimately depends how you want to do it. But the first step is selecting your server. So for this, they're suggesting DigitalOcean. So if we come over to DigitalOcean, I have a referral link here. And it says right here, give $100, get 25. So if you guys use this code, you get $100 credit over 60 days to use for your servers. And then once you spend $25, then I get $25 added to my account or whatever. But this is a good way for you to get like a 2-month trial for $100 or whatever. So I thought I'd bring that up. Next, I'm assuming you get to the homepage and then you just click create and you create a droplet. And I'll have the link to that referral code at the top of the description. So the first thing you do is you select what OS you want. For this, we're just going to take the latest Ubuntu, the LTS version. Standard plan, $5 a month. For me, the best data region is New York. I don't want any of these other options. And now the next thing we need to do is generate an SSH key. If you don't want to, you can use a one-time password. But we're just going to go ahead and generate it. So for this, you want to do SSH-keygen. And then they want a name of a file. So for this, I'll call this like production demo video. But you can just leave it blank, and I'll show you how to get the blank one. For the passphrase, if you do enter a passphrase, you'll probably have to use it when you log into things. So I just prefer to leave it blank, although it is less secure. But for videos like this, it's a lot easier to leave it blank. So now that we've created this SSH key, we need to actually get it. And you have two options. If you just left it blank, then you can type cat ~/.ssh/id_rsa.pub, and that will spit out the SSH key. In my case, because I gave it a name, it just got put into this folder that I'm in right now. So if I type ls, you'll see that I have this production demo video and production demo video pub. And all I want for this is to cat the production demo video.pub. And that's my SSH key. So then I would grab this, I would copy it, and I would put it over here into like the new SSH key. So you just, you grab it from here, you would copy it, you come into here, you would paste it, and then you would name it like prod demo test or whatever you're calling it. They also have the directions in here, I guess, which also works. but I already have my key, so I'm not going to do that. So that takes care of that. Next, we choose a host name for this. So for this, I'll call this like production demo. Tags, don't need them, and we're not doing a backup, so we'll just say create droplet. And now if we come back over to the deploy from the Edge guide, we can scroll down, and then we have the first commands that we have to do. So we need the IP address of this droplet. So once this is done, we should have something to copy. So we'll copy this, and then we'll come back to our deploy guide. So the first step is to SSH in as the root. So we'll say SSH root at, and then we paste in the IP. Now I'm right clicking to paste in here. If you're using the Windows terminal, you can come into settings, and that'll probably open up an Atom, so that'll take a minute. But generally you're looking for just a way to like copy and paste into your terminal if you're doing this, because there are going to be a couple things that we have to paste in. You really don't want to be stuck typing stuff here. But we'll SSH in, and then it'll ask if you want to trust the authenticity, and then just say yes. And then we have to create this deploy user. Oh, there's Atom. Okay. We need to create this deploy user. So for this, we'll just say add user deploy. And it wants a password. So for this, we'll just give it like a password of, I guess, will this work? Yep, okay. So I can just give mine a password, hopefully, and it won't be upset with me. Then we'll say add user deploy sudo. And then we can type exit. And then I'll just show you in Atom what my config settings are so we can get this out of the way. So to add in the hotkeys, I have this key bindings block where I have a key for copy, Control-Shift-C, and I have a key for paste, Control-Shift-V. So that's how I configured this Windows terminal. But now we need to do this SSH-copy-ID root at, and then the IP address again. Okay, and then after we do this copy ID, we then need to do another one for the deploy. Copy ID, deploy at, and then the IP address. And this is where we're going to run into our first error. So it says permission denied public key. And for this, we can come over to this article. So let's SSH in as root. So we'll say SSH root at the IP address. Let's then do a sudo nano /etc/ssh/sshd_config. And then we want to come down and find this password authentication line, which is set to no. Oh, right here, password authentication no. Let's change this to yes. And then we'll hit Control-O to save it and Control-X to exit. Then we can do a sudo system ctl restart sshd. And then we can do the, we can exit. Or we can just hit Control-D, I guess, if it's going to be like that. And then we should be able to run the same command. So if we type SSH-copy-ID deploy at the IP address, this time it'll actually work. It'll just ask for the password to the server. So that takes care of that. We can now come back over here and we can move on to the next step. So now we want to SSH in as deploy at the IP address. And now we need to start basically pasting these commands in. So I'll try and go through and create a gist of all the commands that we need, but this is pretty much how it's going to go. It's just going to be a lot of copying and pasting for this section of the video. Okay, so that adds node. Now let's add yarn. And you can see not all of these commands take a while. Some of them actually go pretty quick, but like when you're, and for this one you have to press enter for the Redis one. But when you're waiting for like this command right here, it's going to take, you know, it's going to take some time because you're installing quite a bit of stuff. And then after that, you can scroll down and you can choose your Ruby version. For this, we'll just use 2.7.0. And then we'll have some more commands to run once this is done running. Okay, so now that that's done, let's come over here and let's run some of these clone commands so that we can start setting up Ruby. So we're just going to be copying and pasting these in as quickly as we can. And it really, this part's pretty quick up until we get to the Ruby installer. All right, and now like go make yourself a cup of tea or something, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so now that that's finally done, we can keep on with the commands being installed. So we'll set the global RB-env, we'll paste in the Ruby version just to check, we'll install the gem bundler, we'll copy this gem bundler install, and it'll grab the latest version. And then if we run the bundler command, we can see that we're on bundler 2.1.4, even though this was grabbing like 1.17 or whatever. Next, we have to install Nginx and Passenger, so there's some more commands to paste in here. And we'll run an apt get update again. Okay, now we can do a nano for this passenger config. And for this, we have to change this passenger Ruby, and we can just get rid of this. And we'll change this to /home/deploy/RBENV/shims/Ruby. And then we can save this with Control O and exit with Control X. And then we can type sudo service nginx start. And now with the IP address from the production demo, we can open up a new tab, type that in, and we'll see welcome to Nginx, which is step 1. All right, now let's move on to the next step. We need to remove the current sites enabled default, and we need to add in our own, but we're going to name it based on what our application is named. So in this case, if I open up another window, this is the name of my application. So this is what it's going to be called when the file gets copied onto the server. So when we name it in here, what we want to say is nano/etc/nginx/sites-enabled. And instead of my app, we want to call it whatever your Rails app is called. So in my case, it's called production_demo. So I'm just going to call it production_demo. We'll then come over here and we'll grab the server block and we'll paste it in here. And we want to replace the locations where we have my app. So right here, we have a my app. So I'm going to replace it with the name of my application, which is production_demo. And then up here, there's another my app, and we'll just get rid of this middle one, and we'll say production_demo. But that should be the name of your application, not the name of mine. So if yours is like book review or something, then name it book review. And then we'll exit out of this, and then we can do our sudo service nginx reload. The next step is setting up Postgres. So we'll do that as well. We'll just copy some of these commands. We'll copy some of these commands. Hit yes. And then we'll create our users. Okay, now let's type sudo su space hyphen space Postgres. Then we'll do create user hyphen hyphen pw prompt space deploy. And we need a password for this role, so we'll just give it a password of password. Hopefully it won't yell at us. Obviously use a better password for your password. And then we'll say create db space hyphen capital O space deploy space production_demo, because he has my app right here, so you want to replace it with the name of your application. And then we can type exit to leave this. And if you want to test this, you can type psql hyphen capital U deploy hyphen capital W hyphen H and then 127.0.0.1 space hyphen D and then production_demo. And it should show that you've connected. So here it's asking for my password. I'll type that in, and I'm now back into the PSQL. We can skip this section on MySQL unless you want to set up MySQL instead. I've opted for Postgres here. So the next step is to set up Capistrano on our local version of the project. So we'll come over here into the stuff that's on our computer, or if you want, you can come over to your server and type or hit like Control D to exit out of it. But I have two windows, so I might as well put them to use. So I'll leave one in and I'll leave the other one out. So in our local version, we need to open this up in a text editor because there's quite a few changes that we have to make. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is come into our gem file, and we need to add in these 4 Capistrano gems. So we'll just do that right here. The other thing you're going to have to do is if you're using Postgres, like you followed that setup up there for the Postgres, you have to add in the gem for PG. And if you try to bundle this gem for PG, you need to have, where is it? It's one of these. right here. You need to do a sudo apt-get install libpq-dev. So you need to run this command right here, and that will install the thing you need to actually be able to do the pggem. So now you can run bundle, and adding the pggem should work. You could also add this into a group for like production or whatever, but in this application, I'm just doing it right here. The next thing we can do is we can type cap install all cap stages equals production, and that'll add in a few files. So now we want to come into our cap file, and we can just copy these 5 lines right here and paste them like below deploy or whatever, and save that. The next thing we have to do is come into config and deploy.rb, and we have a whole bunch of stuff here that we need to put in. We can replace these 2 right here with the my app name. We'll switch my app in the pasted version with production_demo. And now we need to add in information for our GitHub repo. So we do also need to create a GitHub repo for this. So I'm going to pop over to GitHub real quick, and I'll create a repository for this application. So in the top right, I'll hit new repository, and I'll call this production_demo, and I'll create it. And then they give you some instructions here. So we'll type git init. We're not going to add a readme, so we'll say git add dot git commit -am init commit. And then we'll say git remote add origin git at github.com : and then your username. So whatever your GitHub account username is / the name of your repository. So in my case, it's production_demo.git. And then after that, we can say git push -u origin master. Now, if I come up here and I refresh the page, we'll see that this is now a fleshed out repository. So now that we have this, we can come over to the clone /download, and we can copy our repo. And then we'll just come into here, and for the repo URL, we just paste that in. Now, the other thing is, if you are using like a webpacker and like node stuff, I think you need to add in 2 extra things in here. I think it's like public /packs and node_modules. But we're not covering setting up webpacker in this video as well. So I'm just leaving this blank for now. This is just getting your basic cookie cutter application up and running. And then from there, you know, I can do more tutorials covering how to set up this other stuff. It's just I don't want to clog up a tutorial with like every single possible installation step that you could take. So that takes care of adding the name of the application and the GitHub repo. I think that's it for here. Next, we come down to config. We come down to config and deploy production.rb. And in here, we just need to say that the server is, and if you come over to your DigitalOcean, you can copy the IP address, and then we'll come back to this Go Rails file. So we have the IP address. The user is deploy, which is what we named it. And the roles are %w, open brace, app, db, web. Now you can save that. Now the next step is to SSH into our application, or into our server again. So SSH deploy at, and then the IP address. I have that open in the other window, so I'm going to move over to there. I'll hit Control L. So now we have to, okay, so now what we want to do is say make dir /home /deploy / and then for me it's production_demo. And then we want to nano /home /deploy / production_demo /.rbenv -vars. And then we can paste in this information. So we don't have Stripe right here, but this is where you would put in your Stripe public and your Stripe private key or private key. We'll get to the secret key base and the master key in a second here. We also don't have MySQL, but if that's what you're using, then feel free to. But we do have Postgres, so we say database URL Postgres deploy, and my password is just password, which is why I said it like that so that you guys could see it. Oops. And then it's /production_demo. Now for the Rails master key, we need to come back over to this window. And if you look at, let me find it. Right here, the command to get your master key is you have to type editor equals, and then you can either use Vim or Nano. I'm going to use Nano. Rails credentials : edit. And then in here, you have your secret key base. So you want to just grab this string right here and copy it. And then you can exit out of here. And then if you come over to your production demo, you want to come down to your secret key base and say this equals that long string of numbers. Now for your Rails master key, that is inside of your master key file in your config folder. So you can come in there, copy this, and then come back over here, get rid of the oh hi, and just replace it with that string. And now this file should be set up. So we can close this. Now let's come back over here, and the next step is to type cap production deploy. Now this is going to fail, so we have to exit the server and come back to our local app. And we want to type cap production deploy. It's going to fail, but that's okay. I want you guys to see it fail so that when you see errors like this, you don't get scared. It's telling us git at github.com permission denied public key. And that's because although we've added this to the GitHub repository, the server doesn't have access to the GitHub repository yet. So what we need to do is we need to come onto the server and we need to generate an SSH key on here and add it to our GitHub account. So we'll say SSH hyphen keygen. Yep, sure, save it there. Yep, no passphrase. Okay. Then we want to cat ~/.ssh/id_rsa.pub. And then we grab this right here, and you can tell it's the right one because it's deploy at production demo for me. Then we'll copy that. We'll come over to our GitHub page, and we'll go to the top right for our profile. We'll come down to settings, and then we'll go to SSH. Okay, and now that I've cleaned this up a little bit, we can hit new SSH key right here. We can paste it in, and we can give it a title of like Rails prod demo or whatever, and hit add SSH key. Okay, now that that's done, when we run the cap, where is it? Oh wait, we're in the wrong one. We got to come over to our local server. We can now run cap production deploy, and we can see what happens. Okay, so now that that's done, let's try to access our server and see how much we broke. So if we open up a new tab, we can, we can come back over to DigitalOcean and grab our IP address maybe. Then we can come to our new tab and we can paste it in, and let's see what it says. Okay, so it's telling us that the page we were looking for does not exist. So what if we try to actually create a page? So we'll say Rails G controller, pages, and we'll give it a home action. And then we can come into our config and our routes.rb. And we can say, make this, instead of git, we'll set this to root. And instead of slash, we'll make this hash. We'll save this. And let's also do like a Rails G scaffold post. We'll give each post a title and a body of type text. And then we'll run a Rails db : migrate command to migrate the database, and we'll come up to our app, assets, style sheets, and we'll delete the scaffolds.scss. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's do a git add .git commit -am added a thing. Well, I guess we should make it meaningful. Added posts, git push. Okay, and now we can do another cap deploy. So if we type cap space production space deploy, and we check our GitHub repo, which should be one of these. Okay, so if I move this over here and we come over to our GitHub repo, you can see that the last commit is in here, which is how we're pushing these files. So you have to commit your stuff if you want Capistrano to be able to put it onto the server. So this is sort of like how your production server will update by doing stuff like this. Okay, now let's try to refresh the page, and you can see here, pages home, and it works just like a regular Rails app would. So if we type /posts, we can create a new post. This is a production post. We deployed it in 50 minutes if you go by the unedited time for the footage. ... Because this did actually take quite a while to get through some of these installations. But yeah, I hope this helps someone. I thought it might be nice. This Edge guide is great, but I thought it might be nice to go through and, you know, help you guys by pointing out what I got stuck on, at least setting this much up. I will say I have gotten stuck on the active storage setup. I've also gotten stuck on the webpacker setup. So there's going to be a video covering that stuff, assuming I can figure it out. But it has not been a friendly experience, to say the least. But yeah, I hope this helps, and I'll see you guys in the outro video. One thing I wanted to point out, if you run into any problems, you can come into your log and your Capistrano log. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll usually get like your errors here. You can pretty easily identify them. So that's one way to check. The other thing is if you come into your server and you, so let me just let me cd into production demo. If you run into an error while your production server is live, if we ls here, you'll see that there's a current folder. What we can do is we can nano the current/log/production.log. And that'll open up this production log. And if you want to get to the bottom on Windows, it's Alt and your question mark key. And that'll take you to the bottom. And you can also see your errors in here. So those are the two ways that when I'm setting up a production, I usually go through and I do those. The last one is like, you know, you can look at your Nginx errors. But at this point, I feel like Nginx is probably the least of your concerns if you're working with this with Rails 6. But yeah, so that's actually the end. I will see you guys in the outro now. Okay, so that's going to do it for deploying a project to production. If this video helped, you know, remember to like it. If it didn't help, remember to dislike it so that other people aren't subjected to it. I'm sorry if you ran into some problems. This, like I said, this was like a 50-minute video for me to record. I edited it down to like 25-ish. But for you, it'll probably be closer to 60 because, you know, our systems are different. You might run into some other problems. But I hope that at the end this did help and that you did manage to deploy to production. And if you have any questions, you know, ask away in the comments or join the Discord and ask us in there because, you know, we're happy to help. That's going to do it for me. I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.